Okay.
All right, this is an interview with Raymond C. Deitz, Division of Military Naval Affairs Headquarters, Latham, New York. It is the 30th of October, 2003, approximately 10:30 a.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Raymond C. Deitz, place of birth Brooklyn, 4923.
Okay, what was your educational background prior to entering service?
Just high school.
Okay, do you remember where you were and your reaction when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, I was sitting on the front porch reading a book. My father come pounding down the stairs, says, "It's war, it's war." I said, "What war?" "Japanese have attacked." "Where?" "Pearl Harbor." "Where's that?" "Oh, it's out in the Hawaiian Islands." Oh, and I went back to reading my book. I didn't, way out there, that didn't go to bother me. A year later, I found out. But at the time, it seemed so remote. It didn't seem as though that was of any importance at all.
How old were you at that time?
17, not quite 18, yeah.
Okay, did you enlist or were you drafted?
No, I enlisted.
Why did you select the Army Air Corps?
I like ships and boats, but I figured if a boat or a ship can go down, but it may not come back up. But if you're up there, you're going to come down one way or another. And I like machinery.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
there was another aspect to this too. They were so anxious to get draftees or get volunteers in the service. They said if you're in your last year of high school, if you join up, we'll automatically graduate you. Well, all these one of these tests that you have to take in school in New York State is regents.
Uh-huh.
And I wasn't much of a student on those guys. I didn't want those things. So this was a good excuse to get away from all that. So I went in November. I would have graduated from high school in June, which I did. My mother was there. I wasn't.
Oh, and they still gave you your diploma.
Silly thing.
Where were you inducted and where did you go for basic training?
I was inducted in Jamaica, New York, and then sent out to Camp Upton. Way out on Long Island somewhere. Yeah.
What kind of basic training did you receive? Just the...
Only 4 days, and then we shipped down to on a train, went to Miami Beach, and we got basic training plus some other schooling down there. That lasted for a couple of months, when you had to do a lot of aptitude tests to see what you were good for. And then from there they sent me down to mechanic school in Amarillo, Texas, just general basic airframes and whatnot. And well, I lapped this stuff up like dogs. I didn't like school in general. In high school I didn't like it, but this was different, machinery and stuff. And then I got sent up to Seattle, Washington, to the Boeing factory. Wow! There's these great big B-17s coming down the line there, just like cars coming out. Every 2 hours, another big new airplane to come out of the doors.
Well, that must have been something to see, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. And that course lasted, I think, 3 months, and they said the top 4 of the class will fly out of here as engineer on a brand new plane. Well, I wanted to fly so bad I could taste it, so, boy, I studied, I sat up night studying, and I learned how to use the slide rule and every other darn thing. And I flew out of there on a brand new airplane. That was an introduction, the first time I'd ever flown. They flew it down to modification center, I can't remember, someplace in Wyoming, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Yeah. And then from there I went to gunnery school. And that was someplace out in the boondocks of Utah, out in the desert. And then I got attached to a crew down in the center of Florida, attached to when they made up a crew. And we spent the next 6 months flying around together and learning what we were going to do.
Now, did you all stay together?
Yeah.
Pretty much during the war?
Yeah, just for that period of time. When we went overseas, we were together. And but we didn't get any. They said when you finally get over there to Europe, you'll get another month of training. Well, we didn't. We arrived there on a Sunday night, and Tuesday morning we're up over Germany. It was a little short thing.
How did you get overseas?
We flew a plane over.
Okay, where did you go, the southern route?
Yeah, the southern route. Down Trinidad, Belém, Brazil, across to Dakar, Africa, and across the desert up to Casablanca, where a guy tried to sell me his wife for $5 in a carton of cigarettes. Not for the night, to keep her. It was a real education seeing these places, And then up to Italy. Yeah.
Now, did you keep the same plane?
No, as soon as we got there, they took it away from us. We got an old dog.
Did you ever name a plane?
No, it already had a name on it, and to tell you the truth, I don't remember what it was. Later on, we were on a plane on an air sea rescue. It was called the Search and Virgin, but I don't remember what the plane. It was 169, and it was a dog. it just didn't have the get up and go that most of the planes have. And whenever the group would take off with 12 500-pound bombs or 5 1,000-pound bombs, we always carried one less. And I remember one mission, we were on the outside of a turn, and the whole squadron was turning, and we couldn't keep up. We fell behind, and the German fighters were jumping on us, and we dropped. Next time we got into a situation like that, we started dropping the bombs so that we could stay in with the formation. One time we got to one, I don't remember where the target was. By the time we got there, instead of 12, we only had 2 left. But at least we managed to keep up with them. Well, anyway, eventually a crew came in with a brand new airplane, and we'd had enough seniority by that time to get the new airplane. So we gave them the old number 169. And on their very first mission, they never came back with it. I don't know what happened to them. But it's hard to keep track of what happened in the battle. There's so many things going on, you know? Yeah.
Now, what were your duties as a mechanic on the plane, or as a flight engineer?
On the flight engineer, when we were flying non-combat missions, I often flew up in the cockpit in engineering position, but the combat crew, they already had an engineer. But the ball turret was empty, and so was the tail gunner. So I took the ball turret. That seemed interesting. And it was scary, but it was an emotional challenge, too.
Was that the lower turret or the upper?
No, that's the lower one. Wait down this little thing down here.
Oh, boy.
You'd be the last man out of the airplane, I suspect, in case of trouble.
Now, did you wear a flak jacket in there at all, a flak suit?
Wasn't room for it.
Did you ever, your chute, you had to leave off too?
Had to leave the chute off too. Had to leave the chute up in the airplane. And I remember one mission, we got almost in a mid-air collision with another plane, and we tipped over sideways and upside down. By the time we got straightened out, my chute had gone out a window somewhere. I didn't even have it. But this ball turret was 36 inches in diameter. I was a skinny little kid, and I could fit in there, but you had 2 machine guns in there too. The ammunition was in a couple of canisters up on inside the airplane. And if we hadn't got into a long fight, one of the guys in the waist gun said, "Hey, Deitz, you're getting low. Stop the turret a minute." So I'd hold still, and they'd throw in another 1,000 rounds in the can up above. There were 14 machine guns altogether in that thing. 50 caliber, big ones. And they were shooting at us with 20 millimeter. And they shot from a distance of 200 or 300 feet. Planes came close, and this business of shooting from miles away didn't exist at that time. And they sometimes was attacked from the front, and of course the planes were stepped up in these little groups, you know. And one of the planes, the German plane, one time came in and he hit it was in a mid-air collision with the plane next to us. He took off 10 feet of the wing, the whole aileron, the stabilizer back here, and the rudder. And bent the propeller blades on number 4 all back over. Then the plane came back.
Wow, with that much damage.
Yep. A couple of the guys were gone. They jumped out because it was out of control, and they didn't think it was going to. They didn't think they were going to make it, but they got it under control and brought it back. It was a good, tough airplane. And we get a lot of holes. We came back lots of times on 3 engines. Once we came back on 2. And one bad day with a lot of flak, we came back with. There's either 86 or 68 holes in the airplane, just in one mission.
Was anyone seriously injured?
No. This was generally the case. Either everybody was fine, or poof. And when a plane would get down, we'd watch it and try to count the parachutes coming out. But lots of times there weren't any, or there'd be 2 come out. In fact, I was looking right at a commander's plane one time, Colonel Harkness. And his plane got hit, and I don't remember now whether it was before or after the bomb run, but anyway, it caught fire, so he pulled off to the side, and I was looking right at it when it just, boom, it was gone. But nothing left but the 4 big burning things, the engines, I presume. The rest of it was all blown into little pieces, too small to see, or vaporized, or whatever. And I mentioned in my book that in the burial service it talks about the dead shall rise again, incorruptible from the grave. There's nothing left to rise. One would question that. The other thing that was bothersome, and it has been ever since, we never had any funerals or memorial services or caskets. They were here, then they were gone. And if a crew went down, or when a crew went down, a new crew would in the next day or the day after take their place. We had a good supply line coming through from this country. And Boeing, along with another company, was making, 300 or 400 planes a week to replace the losses. But some of the ones like that old 169, you wouldn't flown that plane in this country, but we needed them bad, so we'd fly it anyway, even though it was kind of beat, very beat.
Now, how many missions did you fly?
They gave me, I got credit for 50, but I actually flew 38. But like I said, 11 of those were places like Pulaski or Regensburg. You know where Pulaski was, the oil fields over in Romania?
Yes, in Romania.
I went there 3 times. Altogether, the Air Force went there 11. And that was a long ways off, like 700 miles just to get over there. At that time, we didn't have fighter escorts that would go all the way. There were P-47s, P-38s, but we'd get 2/3 of the way there and they'd have to go back. And of course, the German fighters, they could land any old place. So the losses were always very heavy with that. Well, we finally destroyed it, so that by the time of the D-Day invasion, they didn't have much gasoline, the Germans.
What would you say were some of your most difficult missions?
Regensburg and Pulaski. Regensburg was a Messerschmitt factory. It's in southern Germany, over near Salzburg. And I don't know, we just lost a lot of planes. On one Regensburg mission, we lost, I think it was 24 planes altogether. There was one group put up, one squadron put up 38 planes and got back 14, just that one day. So it makes you, not mad about it, but I wonder about some of the missions that the Air Force flies today, or the Army. They say, gee, we lost a plane. A plane? But of course, there was bad days back then when they'd lose 30, 40, 50. There was 60 planes went down one day between the 15th and the 8th Air Force, all in one day. And when they went down, the change of survival was 30%. The rest of them didn't make it.
What do you think was could you describe your most difficult flight?
I think Pulaski, because of the length of time. No, the difficult one was the time my heated suit didn't work. It was up in southern France. Trying to think of the name of the city in southern France. Anyway, it was an 8-hour mission, and we had electrically heated suits, but they were not like a heated blanket. They had electrical wires in them, but they weren't all that efficient. And some place like the elbow where the wires got bent so many times, and then they'd give out. We hadn't been up in the air very long when they gave out. The suit, the body did. There were little plug-ins for booties and plug-ins for the gloves. So I couldn't do anything about it except to try to keep my hands and feet warm. And finally, all of a sudden, the boots gave out, the booties. So I took the gloves off and put them on my feet because I could put my hand inside my jacket and try to keep them. And I managed to keep from freezing. But we didn't have much enemy action, but it was cold, 50, 60 below zero. Very, very, very cold.
Did you ever get frostbite at all?
No. I managed to avoid it. I couldn't walk when we got down. The guys had to limp me around for a while, but we did have a number of people did get frostbite though. And there was one man, his hand got shot off. There was a tail gunner. Stuck his hand out the window and let it freeze. And he got back.
Oh, the putting it out kept the blood from...
It froze,
frozen.
so he didn't bleed to death, yeah. His story appeared in the Stars and Stripes, yeah. We had another mission I talk about, the one where the guy wet his pants.
Oh.
It was one of these things where it was a combination of errors and terrors and laughter all mixed up together. The first thing happened, we ran out, the mission was delayed. We got all ready to go, and this happened every once in a while. You get out to the plane, you're all suited up and psyched up, ready to go and do it. Then they'd come around and say, we got a hold for 2 hours, or an hour, or something, an indefinite period. And that was always discouraging because you're cranky and you're irritable. You want to go and get it over with. But anyway, this one day we finally did get going. And we were up probably 14, 15,000 feet, and I had to go. I had to urinate. And we weren't very far into this mission. I knew I'd have to go sooner or later. So I asked the pilot if I could use a relief tube. There was a rubber hose with a little funnel on the end of it in the Bombay. So he said, well, hurry up. So I got out of the ball turret and went up to the Bombay and used the thing, and I yanked the zipper on my flight suit up and got a little piece of skin caught in the zipper.
Oh.
Ah! And the radio man leaning around the corner, he's laughing at me. Of course, he's telling all the rest of them over the intercom what's going on. Ha, 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 big joke. So anyway, I got back in, with ball turret, and we went on. We had no enemy action, actually. And then when we got over the target, that day we were carrying 100 incendiary bombs. They were small, about this long, tin ones, full of gasoline and magnesium chips. And when they dropped them, there was one caught on the bottom. It hung nose down, but the shackle on the back didn't release. And 3 more fell on top of it. And there they stood. You know, in the bottom, when it hung down far enough, the little propeller, the fuse came off, so it was alive. I could see that from the ball turret. And the bombardier tried pulling the door shut and slamming them open. It didn't make any difference. The stupid thing wouldn't part. So finally, the pilot said, well, somebody's got to do something. You got to get them out of there. So the engineer went on onto the catwalk, which was about this wide, and straddled the catwalk on the far side. And then he got rid of 1 or 2, and then he passed out because he was from lack of oxygen. We were using a little walk-around bottle. But he fell on the catwalk, and the guys in the radio room dragged him into there, and he's the guy that wet his pants. So they announced that, and we were all laughing because he wet his pants. So the pilot says, for God's sake, somebody get out there and do something. So one of the waist gunners said, oh, I'll do it. So he put down his parachute, he goes out to the bomb bay, and he got rid of them all, and came back in, discovered in the excitement he'd forgotten to fasten the leg straps on his parachute. So we went into gales of laughter again. You get into a hysterical situation, which it wasn't funny, but when you look back at it, but it seemed funny at the time. Yeah.
You said in the form you filled out that you thought daily life was crude. What do you mean by that?
We were living in tents with no floor, a tent just out in the field. And we had a sort of there was no electricity, no lights. At first there was no showers either, but they did finally rig up, the engineers rigged up something. When we had a stove, we burned 100 octane gasoline to keep the place warm. And we made them with stoves out of oil drums. But it was just out in the country. You know, you've seen these pictures of the 8th Air Force, they have a dance in the hangar and all that stuff. They didn't have anything like that, because there wasn't any hangar to have one in anyway. And most days we flew. The weather is much better down in Italy than it is up in England. And of those 38 missions I flew, we probably flew 50 times, but if you didn't go to the target, or you didn't get there, it didn't count. So a lot of the times we got up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, had a briefing, got aboard the plane and went part way to someplace, turned around and came back. But that wouldn't count. Even though a couple of times we ran into a huge weather front and the planes hit some mid-air collisions. I was down in my turret and I saw just a wing of, that's the picture on the front of that book, just a wing of a plane fluttering through the air. We lost 4 that day, and it didn't count.
Now you said also that one of the experiences that left the greatest impression was refugee Jews. What do you mean by that?
Well, to back up a little bit, Secretary of State Hull was the Secretary of State when the war started, and a lot of Jewish refugees tried to get out of Europe and come to this country, and under the guidance of Secretary Hull, they said no, unless you had a relative, if you had a grandfather or a husband or something, you could come, but a lot of Jews came and were denied entrance. There was I remember in 1941, I think it was, a ship came and docked at Philadelphia, and it had about 1,000 or 2 Jewish refugees, and we wouldn't let them land. They had to go back to Europe. They disappeared into the concentration camps. Well, anyway, by 1944, they began to recognize that this was a real problem. Of course, nobody knew about the concentration camps earlier. And so when they finished that combat tour, this was July of 1944, they drove us over to Naples to go back to the States for reassignments. There was about 300 of us airmen, about 500 very badly wounded infantrymen, and 600 Jewish refugees out of an Italian concentration camp. And the first night aboard that ship, they said we're only going to have 2 meals a day because of crowding, and I like to eat, so I said, well, I'll volunteer for the kitchen duty, so I'll be where the food is. And then my job was to stand there and hold a GI mess kit and hand them to the people coming in. Well, I opened the door and the people started to come in and they saw the food, you know, the steam table, and the men and the older boys went wild. They pushing the women and kids aside and jumping all over them and screaming and yelling. Some of them were up on the steam table scooping the food with their hands. It was a very distressing thing to see. I didn't grow up in any situation like that. Didn't know how to cope with it. Anyway, they shut the thing down. We gave everybody an apple and a loaf of bread. Then the next day they appointed a soldier to go with every person and help them with the folding kit. And by that time they realized there was food enough for everybody. Starvation is not a nice thing to see. At our camp, sometimes Italian civilians would come into the camp and beg for food. And one day we had pork chops, which was rather rare. We usually had canned stuff. But anyway, going out of the line, there was some Italian adults standing there holding out tin cans and bottles for any scraps we had left. Rather than throw in the garbage, we'd give it to them. And I had a couple of pork chop bones, just the bones. So I held it out with an old white-haired gentleman. I held it out towards him, and a younger fellow jumped for it, and they both grabbed for it, and they knocked the thing on the ground. And these two adult gentlemen were on the floor, on the ground, punching and fighting each other over these two bones. You know, wow. People don't do that. But when you're hungry enough, you do it. Anyway, this ship was in Naples, and it took us 31 days to get from Naples to New York, zigzagging in a slow convoy all the way across. And the only exciting thing happened there was one night in the Mediterranean. I woke up and the ship was full of smoke, and I had no duty. I was just a passenger. I was way down to the bottom. Smoke, holy smoke! So I hollered fire, and I ran for the stairs and got up on the deck. And on the deck there was more smoke, and then I suddenly realized I had a flashlight in one hand and a life preserver in the other, and not a stitch of clothes on. So I argued with myself for a while, and finally got nerve enough to run back down to get my pants. And what they were doing, they were trying to lay a smoke screen, but the convoy was moving so slowly the smoke didn't roll off, and just got sucked down into the ship. At any rate, we didn't get bombed, we didn't get sunk. You don't know what's happening in situations like that. And those Jews came to this country. I got to know some of them in that month at sea. They were sent out to an old CCC camp in Oswego. And there's a story about it just been put up in the last few months over at the New York State Museum. Pictures of that. The big problem with most of these refugees, they didn't have any papers. The enemy had taken everything they had. No driver's license, no birth certificate, nothing, no documentation. And so what they did, they sent them up to this place in Oswego, and then there they were free to write or call relatives or friends or anybody in the United States, and if somebody would sponsor them, then they could go, which they did. So that was the first ship that came, and that was 1944, July. Before that, we didn't have it. The Jews were not allowed to come into the country.
After you returned to the States, what was your assignment?
Oh, I had a 3-week furlough. There was a friend of mine, he was on furlough too. He was from the 8th Air Force. We had a good furlough. We dated the girls and went to Jones Beach, but one day we were talking to the two of us. He said, I feel terrible about being here when our buddies are still over there. He said, I got to go back. And I said, yeah, me too. So we did, and he turned up missing. He's gone. And then I got attached to an air sea rescue outfit, which was a B-17 with a lifeboat on the bottom of it. We trained down in the Caribbean, the Caribbean. The idea was to go out and find a raft or people floating in the water or whatever and drop them. This boat had 3 big parachutes on it. So we went through, in fact, at one point they took us out the Coast Guard took us out into the Gulf of Mexico and left us sitting there floating around in a rubber raft so we'd know what it was like. Sharks out there too. And then...
How long did they leave you for?
Well, several hours. We had to wait for a plane to come out and find us, They didn't tell them where we were. But it was hot and we wanted to go swimming. Nobody wanted to get into the water. But the lifeboat was completely equipped with everything necessary. And it came down on these 3 parachutes. There were 4 rockets shot off to the 4 directions of the compass with corks on it, so the rope would float, a long rope, 50 yards long. And so if you didn't land right at the people, at least they could get a hold of the rope and pull themselves to the boat, hopefully. But it was all sort of, didn't turn out to be too much. From there I got sent to the Aleutian Islands, a place called Chamois, way out near Attu. By that time the war had long passed the Pacific Theater, so there was nothing going on there. We spent our time being ready to rescue somebody if they needed it. And we also flew out to drop food supplies to a couple of weather stations that were on little islands up in the Aleutians.
So this was after the war ended?
No, the war was still going on, but the action had all moved. There was no more any action up in Alaska. The Japanese had been conquered at Attu, and they had left. If you recall your history, the Japanese invaded Attu and Dutch Harbor, and we fought them off at Attu. And in Dutch Harbor, they came in with ships and submarines one foggy night and took all their people off. And when we went to invade, there was no Japanese left. And that's why I was out in the Aleutian Islands when the war ended. And I also almost enlisted. I said you were supposed to have so many points depending on your military experience. I had enough points to go home, but I wasn't being sent home. I was just waiting out there and waiting out there and waiting. And they were looking for new recruits, so I signed up for another 3-year hitch. They said, we guarantee we'll have you home in a week and a half and you'll have a 3-month furlough. And I was going out the end door to the office, and I said, hey, Deitz, your name's on the board to be shipped home tomorrow. So I went back in the office and found those papers and tore them out. Otherwise, I'd have been in for 3 more years. I just wanted to get out of the place. I don't know if you've ever seen a map, but Chemie is so small, it isn't on most maps. It's half a mile by 2 miles. And it's an interesting place, but the sun only shines 3 days of the year up there. It's fog and rain and fog. But at least Chemie it was flat. It didn't have any mountains on it, so it made a good airfield, even for ILS landings. Yeah.
So when were you discharged?
3 years to the day I went in. Went in on 11/12/42 and got out on 11/12/45.
Okay, when you got home, did you ever make use of the GI Bill?
Yeah. Signed up to go to college, but it was too much of a emotional switch. I only stayed for a couple of months. It was hard to adapt to civilian life. When you come home, people are talking about the movies and this and that, and you've just been over in a fighting experience, and it didn't sit good at all. I didn't adapt to it well. So I didn't stay long. I got out and got a job as a mechanic for what they trained me for.
Did you ever make use of the 5220 Club?
No, I don't know what that is.
It was like an unemployment, 52 weeks, you received $20 a week?
No, I never did.
Okay. Did you ever join any veterans organizations?
No. Mostly we lived in small towns, and they weren't around. I just never did.
Did you, when President Roosevelt died, do you remember your reaction to that?
Yeah, I had voted for him for his last term. Trying to think, where was I? I guess I was up in the Aleutian Islands, and everybody felt pretty bad about it.
Do you remember your reaction when you heard about the dropping of the atomic bombs?
Puzzlement. Nobody knew any details. What's an atomic bomb? They used the word. The atomic bomb was coined, and it was broadcast over the radio, but nobody understood what it was. At least nobody where I was. And until we began to get reports of just this one bomb would do what 20,000 ordinary bombs would do. And of course, they didn't have television. Finally, when you get to a theater later on, you'd see the newsreels and pictures and that sort of thing. But it didn't take much of a, didn't make much of an impact because they didn't know what it was.
Okay. Did you ever stay in contact with anyone?
No, I should have over the years. I've been on first 2 crews actually during that period of time, and they'd have these. In the magazines or in the paper, you'd see there's going to be a convention of the 15th Air Force down at Miami Beach or Los Angeles or someplace. And I just never had the wherewithal to go out to those things. By this time, I'm married and got family and kids, and so I never went to any of them.
Did you ever see any USO shows?
Yes. Our briefings were held in a barn in Italy, and we didn't see Bob Hope or anybody famous like that, but they had some belly dancers from North Africa came up and entertained us one night. Wow! Everybody went wild. Except I wondered, they were probably from Toledo, Ohio, but they were acting like Egyptian dancers, entertaining the troops. Yeah.
How do you think your time in service changed or affected your life?
I've always had as an adult a great feeling for the freedoms in this country. When Martin Luther King organized the Voters' March, I was very upset to find out that black people couldn't vote simply because they were black, you know. So I went down to Selma, Alabama, 1964 or 63, somewhere in there. Spent a couple of weeks down there living with a black family. Got arrested and went in jail for walking down the street with a black man. In fact, to get there, I flew down to Atlanta. I was trying to get a flight over to Birmingham, and the flight ticket agents were very uncooperative. I'm one of these damn Yankees from up north. They said there's no planes available. Maybe there really weren't, I don't know. One of them standing there scratching my head, wondering what to do. Martin Luther King and his entourage walked into the airport lounge. So I went over and shook hands with him, and he said, "Where are you headed for?" I said, "I'm trying to get to Selma." Well, he said, "I got a little plane we rented." He said, "There's room for one more if you want to come." So I went with him from Atlanta to Birmingham.
Really?
And when we got off the plane there, he pulled me aside in the lobby over by a bunch of phone booths, and the secretary said, "I got him on the phone, Dr. King." He says, "I'll be with him in a moment." And he says to me, "Now, you got to be careful. You're in dangerous territory." He says, "You've still got 60 miles to go to get to Selma." He says, "Don't get in the car with any white people." This is an education in itself. So he talks along that vein line. He said, "There's plenty of good, safe black folks running back and forth. That'll run you over there." And he finished talking with me, and we shook hands, and he said, "Good luck." And then he turned around and picked up the phone, and he said, "Yes, Mr. President." And I'm thinking, he's standing there talking with me, and Lyndon Johnson's cooling his heels on the other end of the line. Anyway, I was very disturbed with the whole need for the civil rights movement, and very relieved to see that it has come as far as it's come. Because black people in those days didn't get very much. And it's still true, not just with blacks, but with others. And that's not what this country fought for. All men are created equal, we're trying to say.
Did you happen to notice any kind of discrimination while you were in the service?
Oh, sure.
I know the blacks were kept in separate
Yeah.
units for the most part.
One time, somewhere in the States, I was stationed in a lot of places in the States. I don't remember just where it was, but one of the other guys on my crew and myself went to the movies one night. And we were standing outside the theater on a line waiting for the theater to open. And Ronnie said, "I'm going over to the PX to get some cigarettes. Hold my space, will you?" I said, "Sure." So he came back in a few minutes, and just as he came back, there was a black man stepped into the line where a buddy was saving a place for him, 2 or 3 people ahead of us. And Ronnie, who was from Texas, lunged at this guy. He said, "You black bastard." He said, "You can't get in the line ahead of me." And I'm pulling on my friend Ronnie. I said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? I let you in the line." "That's different. I'm white." And, not nice. Not nice.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview.
Yes, thank you.
Good.